In today's video, we're going to be focusing in on this upcoming pattern because there is some pretty interesting things that we need to go over. We know that currently the cold air is in the eastern United States, just like this. We also know that eventually cold air will actually build into the west, and this will force this cold air to move up, and also warm air to be able to move into these regions. So we'll see the cold air get replaced with warm air here in the east, and cold and snow will move into the west. Now, the big question mark is when will it flip back? Because we have a really strong signal out here, right offshore of the west coast of North America. Very warm waters. I'm going to do an up arrow so we remember that that's warm waters here. And we've seen a positive PNA for months now out here, which forces the cold air to basically, instead of going into these regions, mostly it forces that cold air to move around all of this warm area. It's actually further north. It's more like this because it's moving around that warm bubble here of the Pacific Ocean as well. We know that the water or the air moves from west to east. So when there's warm waters out here in the Pacific, we're seeing the wind move over these waters and onshore to the west. So this is why these areas are heavily influenced by the water temperatures. And when these waters are warm, we see very high probabilities of seeing positive PNA most of the time. Compared to if these waters were cold, we see a negative PNA most of the time. I hope that makes sense. The water temperature, the surface water temperature, certainly influences the air temperature a lot. Now, we are seeing, again, warm waters out here currently, but we are going to see some cold air move down because it doesn't work all of the time, obviously. We're going to see cold air on both sides of the country, at certain points during the fall and winter. Regardless, it's impossible, I think, for a winter to feature cold air on just one side for the entirety of the winter. I don't think that's ever happened before. I think there's been some winters where it's happened on both sides of the country the whole time, but not one specifically without the other one, if that makes sense. There's been some winters that were complete anomalies where it was just cold winter for everybody. I hope that makes sense. I don't want to ramble on too much. We do have precipitation up here in the northwest as we're seeing this first storm system move down. We're going to see this storm system move in and wrap around the Rockies here. And this is going to bring a pretty big snowstorm here for the Rockies. So we'll see that on the model run in just a little bit. But for now, we're seeing light to moderate rainfall for a lot of Washington, now moving down into northern Oregon. Idaho and Montana are seeing some of the precipitation from this storm so far. I want to make sure I don't miss anything here. We do have some showery activity setting up in here, but it's very isolated and very light. Outside of that, it's just some storminess offshore of the southeast. Not really much to mention here. So, a bit quieter outside of the storm system we have here in the northwest. So what we're going to do is move on, and we're just going to focus in on the upcoming pattern. So here we are taking a look at it. As we can see, this model is seeing this, and even by later this evening, maybe 6 or 8 p.m. here, we do see snowfall beginning for the Cascades and then the northern Rockies there. So Idaho, Montana, and then portions of Oregon and Washington there as well in the Cascades are seeing some snowfall from this system. As we can see, overnight, we're going to see this low, 998, 987 here. So there's a lot of low pressure in the area. In general, this low pressure is going to move around just like this again, like I said, but we're seeing this snow dive down further. So we're seeing Nevada, California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, maybe even Utah there, seeing some snowfall at this point by Saturday afternoon. It's going to be October 22nd, tomorrow from the time I'm making this video. Maybe we'll get some snowy college games. I didn't think about that, but it is going to be snowing. And maybe even, I don't know if the Denver Broncos are playing here, but by Sunday afternoon, or did they just play on Thursday? I don't know. There might be some snow games somewhere this Sunday, so we're gonna be watching for that. If Denver has a snow game, I'm gonna or a home game, better yet. I'm gonna look that up real quick while we're talking. But we can see that there is plenty of heavy snowfall happening here in Montana, Idaho, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, Wyoming, Montana. We're even seeing there for Colorado, down through Arizona, down through New Mexico as well. So we're seeing a lot of different folks seeing some snowfall here, heavy snowfall at that for a lot of different regions. So the Denver Broncos will have a home game actually, but it'll be at 4 p.m. So it's probably going to be more like this frame, which, I mean, if you're looking here, that's going to be a heck of a weather game, if you ask me. Likelihood is that there could be, if not snowfall, there's going to be a 984 millibar low pressure center right overhead. So it's going to be a windy, it's going to be a stormy game. Could certainly see snowfall there. That would be very, very interesting to say the least. We can also see, I don't want to miss this either, that there is some nor'easter type activity trying to develop here along the eastern seaboard during this time frame. So we're seeing some storminess there for a lot of these regions. Basically from Saturday, we're going to see this develop into Sunday, Monday, and even Tuesday. We see coastal storminess here. And we can see this storm is all but said and done by that point. But 988 here as it's moving up, that's Monday morning, the 24th. This causes storminess, as you can see, from Mexico all the way up through the central United States into southern Canada. This is a monster storm, okay, guys? This is a 988 millibar low pressure center in the northern plains. Very impactful storm, and we can see a secondary low develops underneath it because we have our 984 up here. We have a 995 down here. Somewhere along this storm's cold front, we see another low developing there, so that's a pretty interesting setup. And this one also causes a lot of storminess here throughout the central and potentially the eastern United States, as you can see. It kind of meets up with the nor'easter here, so we have a primary and secondary low situation. This would be a really good snowfall setup if this was wintertime. But for now, we're seeing a lot of rainfall and storminess here for coastal regions, probably windiness there in New England as well. And then for regions in Canada, the Ohio Valley, the Great Lakes, and the Northeast. So this is causing a lot of storminess. We're also seeing some more snowfall here by Wednesday, Thursday. That's 26th, 27th time frame, out in the Northwest again. So very, very interesting setup here. As we can see, this one dives down pretty far south. So we're seeing that low fizzle out, but move really far south, and there's some snowfall in there as well. We get another nor'easter far offshore developing, so we're going to be moving into a nor'easter pattern, it appears, because I've seen 2 or 3 develop here on this model run. So this model is really feeling like nor'easters are going to be more and more likely as time moves on. And I bet this storminess here is probably going to try to move up the coast too, since we've seen that pattern be likely. But that is far out. Take it with a grain of salt. That's Halloween day there. So that is pretty far out, about 10 days from now. So take it with a grain of salt. But that seems to be what's happening. And then also it appears like another storm system is maybe moving down for the Rockies. Another snowstorm potentially here around Halloween. So a lot happening here in the upcoming pattern. We see a little bit less of that flip to the east with the activity. I do think with, again, the sea surface temperatures, that it is inevitable that within the next month we will see at least some Arctic blasts moving back into the eastern United States. It is very normal for even in very, very cold falls like we've had, or cold winters like we potentially will have, for warm-ups, even week or two long warm-ups or longer, to occur within those very, very cold winters and falls. It's considered a thaw in the wintertime, a winter thaw, and it's very, very typical. So no reason to panic there. We've seen plenty of cold this fall, especially the first half. Now, for total precipitation through the next 10 days, no surprise here, the central and the northwestern United States are seeing the most here, and then the coastal regions along the east coast seeing a lot too, with multiple nor'easters potentially. So if you're anywhere in the whites, which there's not a whole lot here, pretty much everybody's getting precipitation here. If you're anywhere in the whites, though, we are getting practically no precipitation. Your grays will be 1/10 of an inch or less of precipitation. Your greens will be 1/10 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. Your blues will be 1/2 an inch to an inch. Your yellows will be 1 inch to 2 inches. Your reds will be 2 to 5 inches. And then your browns will be 5 to 10 inches. We can see a lot of that happening for Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, and then Washington and Oregon there. We even see 10 inches plus there for, I think, Washington, where it gets kind of white within those browns. So definitely large amounts of precipitation expected for the Northwest as a handful of storms move through just over the next 10 days. Now, total snowfall here, if you're anywhere in the grays, you're expecting a dusting, if anything. Blues will be 2 to 6 inches of snowfall. Purples will be 6 to 10. Your pinks will be 10 to 20. Your pastels will be 20 to 30, that's your pastel blues, and then your pastel purples, like what we're seeing up there in Western Canada, also for the Cascades in Washington. We're seeing 30 to 40 inches plus in those regions. Certainly a very, very large amount of snowfall, and actually if you look at the bottom right here, we can see that the maximum on this map somewhere is expecting 121 inches of snowfall. I'm willing to bet it's here somewhere in kind of very far western Canada there, for the Cascades. I don't know what the mountain ranges specifically are called here, but basically the Cascades up there in Canada. It might even be called the Canadian Cascades. I have no idea. Correct me on what that's called because I need to know, actually. So I would appreciate you guys. I know obviously the Rockies extend into Canada, but I don't know if the Cascades do. Now, for the temperature pattern, like I mentioned, we're in a positive PNA. We do see the cold air in the east. This is the positive PNA, again, being influenced by the warm waters of the Pacific here moving onshore. And this is forcing the cold air to move way down into the eastern United States. It has to move around this warm bubble here. They don't mix. It's like oil and water, so they move around each other. We can see pretty quickly this transitions into a negative PNA, though. The first one that we've seen in a while. And the opposite happens here. Again, it still has to move around, so we see the warm air moving around from the south. Instead of that cold moving around from the north, the cold is over the west, so the warmth has to move around now. We still see a lingering cool down here for the southeast, but that will come to an end very shortly. Here's Sunday afternoon, and we can see deep cold moving down for the west. This is truly an Arctic blast out west as well, like what we saw in the east for a while. We do see some cold fronts developing, and this causes a lot of storminess. And this is deep Arctic air in the west. And we can totally tell the warm air is, again, moving around this area and into the east. So classic negative PNA. We see over time, we get some cooler air, more neutral here for portions of the east. But the cold air primarily is still over the west. That's by Friday the 28th. Let's see. And then by the end here, Halloween Day, we're still seeing slightly above normal temperatures out east and still seeing a negative PNA here where we see this cold air in these regions. It is getting a bit of a tilt to it where the south central United States is seeing some of this cooler air. Could make it harder for some of this warm air to wrap around. That could be why it's only slightly above normal temperatures. But I do expect that since this will be kind of the 2-week mark or no, that won't be the 2-week mark. That'll be about the 1-week mark of us seeing a negative PNA. This probably could last a week into November or 2 would be my expectation. And that would be a pretty regular thaw. Or we could just be in the type of fall and winter where patterns are just really slowly moving and lasting a very, very long time. And we could see this negative PNA last through November, and then it could flip back. Anything's possible. It is the weather. That's what I love about it so much, is anything is truly possible. We could see a hurricane that becomes a massive snowstorm hit anywhere. It is truly limitless weather, and it's just what made me fall in love with it as a kid, and that's still why I'm in love with it today. Anything is possible. I hope you guys are as curious as I am to find out what's going to be happening here. It is truly like a mystery we're unfolding, so be sure to subscribe as we will upload every single day, and we will get to the bottom of this eventually and figure out when this is going to flip back. So again, subscribe. We do upload daily. That will pop up in your subscription box every single day. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.